Welcome to another Blue Amp Substack Live. I'm David Schuster with Cliff Schechter. Man, Cliff, we got a
Oh my
lot to
God, we're
talk
live. You
about.
didn't tell me we're live.
We're going to do it live.
We're doing it live. Oh my Lord. Hey, you do the invite or the hello, if you will. The
Hello,
handshake,
everybody.
as they call it.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster, joined by Cliff Schechter. You're watching Blue Amp live on Substack, and thanks to all of you for joining us, for subscribing, for everything else you do. Cliff, we have a lot to talk about today. And I love the title, by the way, Wag the Dog. Explain what's going on.
Well, and we're going to talk about this with someone I would call slightly qualified. Retired Navy Commander Bobby Jones is joining us. Someone who probably could beat most of us up, and I like that about him. No, seriously, like for real, a guy who understands exactly what's going on there. My theory, as just someone who connects data points, knows how cynical and evil political campaigns are, and has a background in international affairs and the rest, is they're absolutely wagging the dog. Venezuela gives Trump everything he needs. He gets to call them communists. He gets to say it's brown people trying to sneak into our country. He gets to call them narco terrorists and criminals and all that stuff. And I mean, this is like out of clear and present danger if anybody ever saw that.
And for people who are, by the way, who are getting caught up on the news, we're up to what now? 4 Venezuela alleged narco boats that the Trump Pentagon has bombed. Again, without providing any evidence that, in fact, they are actual narco terrorists or drug traffickers. We just have to take the Trump administration's word for it. There has been no request.
There's no reason why you wouldn't do that, because they've been honest about so many things. So yeah.
And there's been no effort to get a declaration of war from Congress. So this is essentially illegal under the Constitution. There's also been no consistency in the policy, because if the argument is, well, if this is law enforcement, then what you do is you board the boats and you arrest people and you give them due process. But that hasn't happened. So it's a shit show either way.
It is. It is a show of shit. Well, I mean, what do you do, if you're Donald Trump, you're physically and mentally decrepit, like, you're turning purple all over, your cankles are sort of at the point where they're large enough they may have developed the ability to reason. They're evolving before our eyes. And I mean, in all seriousness, he's in terrible shape. It's created a power vacuum. It's quite obvious. He's always like, oh, Putin wouldn't do this with me. I promise you, if it had been Biden and there are really almost anybody else, hell, George W. Bush, anybody, Putin's not sending drones over Poland. He senses weakness. You can see it coming from other one-time MAGA, like almost close to lovers of Trump's. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene seems like she something else going on with Trump that we didn't want to know about, at least in her own mind. Now she's turned on him. JD Vance is like, oh yeah, I'm sure he's in perfect health, but if he's not, we're all good. I'm here. They're circling like sharks with batteries, if you will. And they're looking at, there's a vacuum because the Epstein stuff is worse and worse, and everyone knows what's out there, and it's going to come out. We have enough House members now. So, hi, Lisa Murkowski, maybe pretend like you mean anything you've ever fucking said. If she does that, and a few others in the Senate, but it's going to come out anyhow.
And so what you need is a distraction, right? And the economy is going south. The Epstein files,
22,000 jobs, and we're gonna go to negative territory. I think maybe this month, if not in the near future.
And what rallies a nation and unifies a nation better than a war? That's the standard sort of thinking. So here we are, essentially trying to goad Venezuela into either firing back at our aircraft or killing Americans, so that the Trump administration can have an even heavier response and go to war with Venezuela. It's remarkable.
Yes, we're the bait, just so you all know, because that's the kind of leader we have. He's hoping people like us, are traveling anywhere in that area, are attacked by Venezuela to give him a pretense, more of a pretense than he can just make up. But you add in all the other factors too. It's just perfect, right? In terms of the country. Oh, and they happen to have oil too. Gee, shocker. But he can narco terrorists and that they're trying to come across our borders. We have no borders anymore. They're storming them. And I mean, he needs distraction, and now he needs a multiple level distraction, because his age, he's only going to get worse, as we've seen. He's only going to say more ridiculous stuff. I mean, the people at the UN, the other leaders, they were doing that nervous laugh that you do when you're like, is this shit for real? You know what I mean? Like, And that I fully, again, pin on our corporate media because they have not done their job. So they're all the people that pay less attention. I think you brought this up the other day on the show we did yesterday. You know what's going on. I know all the crazy stuff he says, but unless you're seeing him in his own words, his writing, what he says, they sanitize it enough that he just kind of seems like a guy who may be a little bit nuts, a little bit off, but within the realm of reason, and not the complete batshit lunatic that he is. Which all you need to do is see enough of those all caps tweets and hear the speeches that he makes, and that's what I think you were seeing at the UN, which is these leaders, these people that maybe hadn't experienced him before in person, who had read publications were like, oh, he'll probably be a little crazy. We're like, what is this? This person is insane. And that's that's creating a vacuum. There's no doubt.
And before we talk about sort of the military strategy, if there is one, with Bobby Jones, there's also some breaking news, apparently from the Washington Post, that that Pete Hegseth has summoned all of the top generals and admirals and commanders around the globe, like 800. He is calling them to the Pentagon, to Virginia, without telling them why. I mean, people who are literally on boats and aircraft carriers and embedded with their troops, they are having to come back to the United States early next week for a meeting without being told what's going on. That is unheard of in the history of the Pentagon. So there's that. And then
if I were cynical, I would guess that there's a loyalty pledge involved, and perhaps he's going to make them all swear that they will back him no matter what he does as we approach elections, or they will be fired.
And before we talk about that with Bobby Jones, the other issue I wanted to bring up, Cliff, is that we're now, Tuesday is the day that the government is going to shut down if, in fact, there's not enough votes for this continuing resolution. The long story short, Republicans have passed what's called Republicans passed through the House what's called a continuing resolution that's basically funding the government for 7 weeks. Democrats have said, okay, if you're going to continue the government, we need to continue the health care tax credits under Obamacare that are due to expire at the end of the year. And Republicans are like, oh, no, we can't add that. And then Democrats are saying, no, wait a second. If you don't extend these tax credits, healthcare costs are going to skyrocket. They're already going to go up because of the Republican cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. You must add this to the bill. And the Republicans in the House, they just skip town. Like they went in recess, so there's not even a possibility for negotiation.
Like the last time with Jeffrey Epstein, they just, whenever there's anything tough they have to talk about,
so now,
thing for them.
And so now Schumer and the Senate Democratic leader Schumer and the House Democratic leader Jeffries, in response to this, they say they sent a tough worded letter to Donald Trump. And I'm just like, what? And so to your point, and to a great, column that Cliff wrote the other day on Substack, now is the time for Democrats to essentially say to Donald Trump Republicans, go fuck yourself. Go ahead and shut it down. Shut down the government. If you're not going to protect people with health care, we're not adding anything. We're asking that you continue these tax credits that exist now. If you're going to continue funding the government, which we will support, you have to continue these tax credits. The Republicans are like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. And so now it's a standoff. And I'm arguing, and I think you probably as well, Democrats have to stand firm and say, fine, shut it down.
If Jeffries, the whole reason when Schumer caved last time was so he wouldn't cave this time. If he caves again, and I've already said this, they're terrible at being leaders. They don't lead. They don't inspire. They don't seem to understand basic messaging. I'm not trying to be nasty here. Like I wanted it to work. I even gave Hakeem Jeffries more time for it to work just because he was newer to the job. But they're not up to you need to tell a story as humans have been doing around fireplaces, around fires for 10,000 years. Every story, there's a good guy and there's a bad guy, and the bad guy is harming you by doing this, and the good guy, us, we're going to step in and stop them by doing this. They are harming you because all they care about are religious fanatics, oligarchs. They're feeding their billionaires the money that should be feeding your children as part of SNAP. They're cutting your Medicaid. They're destroying, so you're not going to be able to afford to eat. And that is the billionaire class around Trump. This group of creepy weirdo. Peter Thiel, who wants to live forever, and Elon Musk, who wants to Neuralink himself to Mars or whatever the fuck he wants to do. I don't really care. They're creepy, they're weird, and they're taking funds that regular folks need. And Democrats could unite a coalition that would extend from the poorest of Americans to the upper middle class to people who make a couple $100,000 a year right now. But everything has gone up in cost. They can't afford to send their kids to college. They can't afford childcare. They can't afford any of these things. And they need to be told why, too. That's because Elon Musk needs another yacht, and maybe what's his face? Bezos will probably get married again in 2 or 3 years. That would be a shock. To somebody else who needs cybernetic body parts, who would be his wife, and we'll pay 40 million for that one too. Like these gross, ridiculous caricatures of people are taking money and funds. Remember, when people are like, oh, well, how you're just saying that. Folks, in that BBB, that piece of crap bill, we created the ability, I've said this before, for spaceports, just like airports, to be able to create bonds. All right. The only two people that have spaceports out there, one is Elon Musk and one is Jeff Bezos. There's so many levels of corruption that corruption is committing corruption under Donald Trump. And the fact of the matter is, we need to get Bobby in here now. But again, like the fact that my demand would have been, we're shutting it down unless you're giving us, and not forget just keeping the credits. You're reinstating SNAP, you're reinstating Medicaid, or go ahead. You have the votes. It's not we're shutting it down. And even by meeting with them, you're giving them the imprimatur of this is a bipartisan failure, which is what makes me so angry. Let them figure it out. They said they would. They got a majority to do it. Let them do it.
Yeah. And the Republicans, they're not even negotiating. I mean, it'd be one thing if there were negotiations and were different. They're not even willing to talk about this. So Democrats show absolutely no self-respect and no shame if they sort of talk in good faith, or if they make threats but don't back them up, or say, oh, yeah, okay, we'll trust that we can do this at the end of the year. No. You do it now.
Yep. All right, I see Bobby Jones just joined in general. And Bobby, we're inviting you there should be an invite heading your way. And if you'd like me to refer to you in a more formal way, by the way.
There he is. Hello, Bobby Jones.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good to have
man.
you.
How are you?
I cannot complain. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh my God, sure. Absolutely. Would you honestly? Would you want us to refer to you as Commander? Or do you want us to be like, just making sure?
Hell no, no.
All right. I wanted to make sure. I talked to a buddy of mine before, who we've had on, Malcolm Nance, who I think you know well. He knows you. Was like, Bobby's laid back. He's cool. But I still felt it was right to ask you because you earned that designation. So.
Well, and not only Bobby Jones is a Navy commander, and so he's got tons of experience with military and veterans affairs and military strategy and all that. He was in the last graduating class at Navy before the War on Terror, 2001, and I saw just on the internet. I just saw a picture of you, I guess, hugging then President George W. Bush at your graduation. So, but you've seen it all and you've done it all, and we're so glad to have you on the program.
No, thanks. We are the 9/11 class, and I was last in that class. So it's, it didn't matter. That's why I hugged President Bush so well. I've maintained contact with him through the years. What's interesting to me is it didn't matter where you graduated. It was a different world. You get your diploma, commission, and 109 days later, the world changed. So here we are.
I bet. And I don't think any of us could have expected. I mean, again, terrorist attacks, sure. But I was actually in downtown Manhattan that day and saw the second plane hit with my own eyes, and wasn't far from where that was. So still, that will never leave my mind. Pretty harrowing. I grew up in New York too, even though I don't live there now. So it's sort of there. But I watched some of your, and I thought you'd be perfect to have on here because I watched some of your earlier broadcasts via Lincoln Square. Good group there. Sorry, fixing my camera here. And, you were talking about a lot of the same things that David and I have been talking about, that we've been writing about on our Substack, that we've been talking about here with various folks like this. We've had a bunch of folks on who are, more of with international affairs backgrounds, Olivia Troy, and who's a friend, and I brought up Malcolm and folks like that. So I was hoping, my theory at this point is, and you tell me, be like, hey, Cliff, you're a moron. I don't care that, I've been called worse by people online, but looking at data points, my theory is when I know what Trump's campaign is right now, I know what he's running on, I know what he's trying, an image of a country under siege by illegal immigrants and by criminals and by terrorists, all just who magically happen to be black and brown. Venezuela, communist and whatever. You couldn't pick a better scenario for him to demagogue. And it really, in a lot of these cases, hasn't even been proof that these are boats that are bringing drugs. So I'm going to throw it to you if you think he's wagging the dog as a longer campaign strategy, because I kind of feel like he is.
I'd take it a step further. I think he's playing shot put with the dog. He's not even trying to wag it. Here are some of the concerns that I have, right? So let's start with Venezuela, since it's the one closest to us. You've got what we call a surface action group down there with an amphibious ready group, 2,500 Marines, about a little over 2,000 sailors. Here's the thing. Typically, when the commander-in-chief commits forces to anything, they usually address Congress. There's a primetime address. There's protocol to this. We've seen nothing. The strikes that have happened on these boats, the first with the 11 and then the 3, no evidence whatsoever has been presented. Now, granted, international waters can be somewhat of the wild, wild west, but even the world through the international courts and stuff have established certain rules. There's been no evidence presented, no dossiers of the people killed, no nothing. They're just like, hey, these are bad people. We're going to shoot. Now,
Right.
A lot of people have asked me, well, if these are if this is bad, why don't the officers in charge of those ships deny the orders? Well, because for all they know, it's legal. Because here's why. Let's put this all together in massive construct the last 8 months. The first thing that the Trump administration did was they fired the head judge advocate generals of each service, Army, Navy,
Right.
Air Force.
You wouldn't want anybody looking into what you're doing, right?
Right, because here's the thing. We have this thing called rules of engagement. It depends on where you are, and it's different in different sections of the world. However, before you take military action, typically a good commanding officer, and I had command, will check with the JAGs to make sure, hey, is this lawful based on the rules that we have? Has not. I haven't heard any justification, but most importantly, to remove the people that were there and then bring in your personal lawyer into the Department of Defense, Tim Politor, who I know, right? Bring him in and they reconstruct the JAG Corps to do all of these things that we haven't seen before, to include now prosecuting civilians in Washington, D.C. as part of the National Guard mobilization. All of these things happening starts with, number one, getting rid of the legal requirements. That's the first thing that he's done. Number two, in presenting this case of committing American resources to include American lives to anything, there needs to be what we call goals stated. What does the end state of this operation look like? Right. As far as we know, we don't even know if there's an operation. We just have all of these assets deployed off of Venezuela. The other piece of it too is the national security strategy. And people, y'all need to hear me on this. This comes out pretty much every 4 years for each administration, where it outlines America's priority as far as international and domestic and the security therein. That includes the military, that includes Department of Homeland Security, all of this. We have not seen that. Okay. Every other administration, including Trump's first administration, where he had actual professionals in the roles, Mattis, Tillerson, all of those
Milley.
guys, Milley. We have not seen any of that because they do not want to be beholden to an actual strategy to which they will be held accountable. It's like, what can I do to create headlines, to project strength, whether it's true or not, and it now, after the Epstein thing, to produce distraction. So instead of going after Russia, who's dealing with the Ukraine, he decides to go after someone in our hemisphere in Venezuela because he believes it's going to be a pushover. Okay. Miscalculations matter. And for him to target cartels instead of nation states with the American military sets a new precedent. When you couple that with what's happening in D.C., and now apparently it's going to be happening in Memphis, where you use military force for Leo ops, we got problems. We got
posse comitatus, right? I mean, it's pretty illegal in D.C. And I don't think it's legal, but at least there's some question because of DC's unique status. But I mean, isn't it flatly illegal in Tennessee?
Yes, but here's the thing. You've got to have people who are willing to prosecute that. And so here's the thing. He finds a major city inside of a red-leaning state in Tennessee, right? So the governor's going to be like, cool, whatever. Notice he did it with Newsom in California, and Newsom came back hard, right? There are things that are happening right now that are establishing a polymilitary state that you read about and see in other nations that is taking place not just in real time in America, but at warp speed. And the final thing is, the report that just dropped, all of the flag officers, that's every general and admiral, being recalled to Washington, D.C. to meet with Hegseth in person. I'm not speculating on what that is, but I will tell you this, that's unprecedented. We didn't even see that in World War II.
Well, and the other part of it is, never mind summoning all the flag officers and the generals and the admirals and sort of the Navy equivalents. I mean, usually, even if you're going to recall a general anywhere, you'd say, well, here's what this is about. They're not providing any hint as to what's going on here.
Well, I think that is part of the process with Hegseth realizing he has a very leaky Department of Defense, because people understand what he is doing goes against norms and in some cases may be illegal. So he's keeping everything close to the vest. He'll blindside these cats. As someone who was an admiral's aide, right? You get the information of what this is about and you help your admiral or general prepare for that so they don't look like jackasses in front of their bosses.
Right.
He's not doing that. That signals two things to me. One, this is not about actual tactical deployment or this, that, and the other. This is about policy that's probably not popular, that probably leans on the political side of things, and they're going to call these flag officers to the carpet to see if they're going to enforce it. That's what I think this is about.
You think like loyalty oath kind of, because that's what I was thinking, sadly. Like, are you willing to, I'm not necessarily even in a formal, are you willing to pledge your loyalty, but will you back our play? And if they won't, maybe they're suddenly out of a job.
Well, I mean, and that could be the case. But, me personally, I'm praying to God it's not that. I'm hoping that maybe, okay, you want to clog leaks or tell everybody, keep everything tight. Or maybe it's a photo op because, again, they know that this hit the press and they want that intrigue. They want the attention. And the one thing that Trump and Hegseth both have in common is they believe attention is leadership. Let me say that again. They believe attention is leadership. This is why they don't hold themselves to the same standards that they allegedly demand out of their subordinates. My concern with something like this is, again, unprecedented. People who are in operational theaters may or may not be being called back. What message are you sending not only to the heads of the military that have been in service 30, 40 years, but it's the deck plate sailor, it's the grunt on the ground that's looking around like, what is happening? We've seen people get kicked out the military, transgender with no warning. You've seen people literally having their social media accounts scoured by the Department of Defense, which is a ridiculous, waste of manpower hours. And you've seen all these organizations that supported your mission be gutted by people being fired or asked to leave. And now you have more stress on you to make.
And then they give pardons to the couple war criminals. So when you add that up, what are the incentives there?
And on the issue of attention, I mean, here's what's sort of baffling to me. And I totally agree that, attention in their mind is strength. There's no better way to get attention to whatever you might want to do to Venezuela than going to Congress and saying, we want a declaration of war and here's why. And here's the fentanyl that's coming in from the United States. And maybe you take some of the lawmakers and put them in the skiff and you show them some of the intel, whatever it is. And I have a feeling that just based on the politics, Republicans controlling the House and the Senate, that if the argument was we have, 70,000 people who are dying every year because of fentanyl, we have to put a stop to it, that Congress would probably grant that declaration. Why not go that route? And on the other side of this, if the argument is, well, this isn't really a war per se, it's a law enforcement operation. Well, under law enforcement, then there's due process. You have to board the ships and you have to give them an opportunity to surrender. We're not doing that.
Right. And you just answered the question, why not do it? Because they do not want to be caught up with due process. This is a thing that's happening both internationally and domestically. If you notice how ICE and DHS are moving, they are moving without processing any of these people. They have arrested on accident American citizens only to find out later, oh my God, we made a mistake. You know why? Because you're not putting them through due process. You're making the assumption based on racial profiling that these people are illegal. And so when you do that in the international realm, so you can do this with Venezuela, but boy, oh boy, try doing that in the Persian Gulf and see what happens. Start doing that in the Black Sea and see what happens. There are certain things that they're doing because they don't want to be bothered with the legality of having their orders questioned. Everything that we have seen by putting the military, the National Guard, in action, they don't report to the governor in this situation. They don't report to local law officials. They report directly to Trump and Stephen Miller, right? So we are watching checks and balances being purposely usurped. We're seeing the people that you're relying on to do this be stretched thin. You got National Guard people that are not trained to do this job. Okay.
Yeah, well, and they've got them cleaning up garbage. I mean, there's clearly no reason for them to be there.
It's all about the
yeah,
visuals. I was about to say it's all about the visuals and the message that is being pushed. And again, if this was a Democrat doing it, I'd be just as pissed. If it's a Republican, it could be anybody. We have checks and balances that stop us from being the third world countries that we judge, period. And for the first time in American history, we're seeing a current president jump through all of that. Granted, every president, you know, they'll be like, well, there have been presidents that are pushing up. Yes, there have, but not like this. Not in
well, not systematically on everything, right? Like, I mean, you know, pick what you want. Pick ICE, pick troops in DC, pick what they're doing, you know, off the shores of Venezuela. I mean, it's just, you know, pick what he did with tariffs and declaring a national emergency. I mean, it's one after the other where none of our normal procedures are followed. So he can usurp this power. And I'd love to ask you this because of your background. Like, I mean, I've read two different pieces that seem pretty convincing to me and spoken to people I know. And, you know, and one of them, of course, was about the high levels of depression, anxiety, and that among the soldiers, among the National Guard members in DC, because they don't want to be there. They feel guilty about being there. They know it's not what their job is. Second one I read, which was just incredible to me, was National Guard members going to their higher ups and asking for them to sign letters saying that they would be okay if they committed an act that was determined illegal later on. And the thing is, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think that helps. I mean, if your higher up knows it's illegal, they need to tell you not to do it. And if you know it's illegal, you need to not do it. I don't think somebody can write you a get out of jail free letter, so to speak. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're right. Let me address both of those in order. So the first thing that you mentioned about, you know, depression and all that for the guys that are deployed doing this. Well, there's a few reasons why. Number one, and let's be very clear, the order that they signed, the National Guard deploying to DC, they do not get BAH. What is that? That's basic housing allowance, right? That's basically a supplement so you can still pay your rent and all that. Everybody in the military gets it once they're activated or they're on active duty. Trump usurped that. They're not doing that. Okay. So they're making less money and they're leaving their jobs because these are part-time guys that are activated for emergency. They're leaving their jobs. So they're not getting their regular paycheck. And people aren't talking about this. You don't get your regular paycheck and then getting skimmed on the back end because you're not getting BAH and other allowances means you're losing money hand over fist. And then when you look and see what you're doing, you're literally picking up trash. You're basically an extra park ranger in DC. Of course, it's depressing. And then
so they didn't set up like a Bitcoin exchange for those guys?
No.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but
it's absurd. So I can't help myself. Go ahead.
No, it is. And then when you factor all that in, and you know, National Guardsmen do the job because they're like, hey, when you need us, we'll be ready. To see a job that is so not needed on top of everything I just laid out. That's an issue. So of course morale is down. And then the second point, I'm trying to remember. You said
the ones that are going to their superiors and asking for letters to kind of
right to cover their CYA. The reason that is happening is because instinctively they know two major things. One, they have not been trained to do this mission. I was a United Nations peacekeeper, one of only 30 America had at one point in Africa. I had to go through 6 months of separate training to deal with basic local law enforcement activity.
Which part of Africa were you in? Just out of interest.
Liberia, right after the Civil War, where they had child soldiers and stuff. I mean, it was insane. But I had to go to training for that. These guys have not gone to training. Some of them have seen a PowerPoint, from what I understand, but they are worried about making a mistake because never in their lives did they ever think that they would be policing American citizens on American soil. This is unprecedented yet again. So then, if that wasn't enough, they have taken the deployed National Guard and then attached them to other operations, you know, DEA ops in Texas and all this other kind of stuff. It's slowly creeping out. The infiltration of military into local law enforcement activity is by design because they can be directly controlled by the commander-in-chief and usurp all of the legal boundaries between that. Very simple. And so when you look at what he's doing internationally by not declaring war on Venezuela, he doesn't have to go to Congress. He doesn't have to do this. They can just say it's contingency operations, right? they do not want to be held accountable for their actions long term. That is what is driving all of this. And for them to reshape America, they want to. They know that they're going to get hardcore resistance. So you try to step around the resistance where necessary.
Sure.
Congress has written basically a blank check, but even now Congress is like, what are we doing? And the only court that they listen to, this is another piece, is SCOTUS, the Supreme Court. They do not recognize the other federal judges up that chain of command. So
I wonder why that is, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean,
they're not controlled by Opus Dei, every other court. So I guess maybe that's something to do with it.
It's scary, y'all. It's scary because the speed of which this is happening. You know, I saw Ty Cobb, Trump's personal lawyer, recently, and he's no longer his lawyer. He said the damage that's been done in the first 8 months will take us 10 years to undo if it stopped today. That should make everybody pause.
That's what scares me. Do you have a question to ask, David, or should I?
No, go ahead. I've got a question, but ask yours first related to this because I was going to change.
Because one thing with you guys, besides being so tactically smart, whatever, I know that when you get to your level of military, you're so well educated in history, and as somebody that's sort of my background too. And so I look at Rome, I look at the various examples, and what the most upsetting thing is, however bad Trump is, and he's going to hurt some individual people very badly, but the political culture that he destroys, which he has, and this is the stuff you're talking about, if we don't have, an FDR like level of, reforms or new institutions, I should say, not just, a lot of those are domestic, but I'm saying we're going to need the international ones and others too. This just all becomes normal and easier for the next person. It's just, I can just bomb a ship off the coast of Venezuela. Hey, the last guy did it. I can just send the troops into a city. And that's how democracies fall. So even if it doesn't fall during Trump, we've crossed so many lines. Hatch Act means nothing anymore. Emoluments means nothing anymore. Declaring an emergency so you can put tariffs on people means nothing anymore. If we don't punish these things, and if we don't create new institutions, new laws, new sort of a whole new fabric of what you can and can't do, I almost feel like, our friend Lefty Gramps has it up there, Rubicons aplenty. Exactly. Crossing that Rubicon like Caesar did. I feel like we've done it. How do we go back to being anything resembling the democratic republic we were before?
Well, wow, that's a big question.
I'm sorry. This really bothers me because as somebody who reads a lot of this stuff, I hear a lot of people say, well, you just get rid of Trump. And I'm like, if you read history, sadly, you see so many examples of this where maybe the worst tyrant is removed. But if that whole culture where there was bipartisanship, where there was a common good, a public good, where there wasn't religious zealotry or financial zealotry or whatever in control, where there wasn't these secretive sort of executive actions taken, I don't know how you come back from that unless you pass a whole new series of laws and a whole new regimen. Well,
I think you're hitting on it. And the reason it's going to be difficult for America to come back from this is because, the retention rate in Congress is the highest amongst Western societies here in America, right? You may have a problem with Congress, but for some reason, your representative is not the issue. Never is, right? So that being said, the American public does not hold their elected officials accountable, specifically Congress, because Congress is supposed to be the check to the president more than any other group. It's Article 1, not Article 2, it's not Article 3 of the Constitution, it's Article 1. It's the most important. They have ceded all of their power and authority to the current president. So let's start there. You have to, in my humble opinion, you got to rebuild Congress. Now, in order for that to happen, and I know this is going to sound bad, but we may have to have a catastrophic event in America, like 9/11 level, where either the economy collapses to the point where we're at a depression, or someone calls America's bluff militarily, something that will make American rally together and put the bipartisan aside. Because right now we have people who openly see what's happening. That meeting down there in Arkansas with the farmers down there, and they're praying to God for this, that, and the other. You voted for the guy 31% over, right? Yeah. But because you don't want to be seen as wrong, and a lot of this has to do with amplification and social media, you can't come out and say you were wrong. That's the other piece of this. We are so stubborn with our arrogance where we don't identify what needs to actually change. So here's where I'm at. Trump has won, three more years in office, maybe, but the problem is it's not Trump you need to be worried about. It's the handlers.
Yep.
They're the ones putting out the policy. He does not really, you can tell when he talks, conceptually, he does not understand the complexities of the things he's doing. He is merely the meat puppet that is
It's getting worse, clearly.
Very much so. Very much so. The things that he said at the United Nations this past week, I was like, holy God, I can't believe a president of the United States said this.
Did you see them I brought up to David earlier, they were nervously laughing, all of these people, I think, because you can't really grasp it, and our corporate media has done their best to kind of shave the edges off and make it like, oh, he's a little crazy, but he's normal. You can't grasp how insane he is until you see him either speak live or start regularly reading those all caps tweets at 2 a.m. like to put together like this person really is out of their mind. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
Well, and eventually insanity comes with a cost. And Bobby, you were mentioning a moment ago the idea that somehow, some country calls the U.S. military's bluff or calls Trump's bluff. Let's play this out. Let's just suppose that in Venezuela, they start shooting at U.S. aircraft or they attack the U.S. ships. First of all, do you think that's something the Trump administration wants so that they could then have a larger scale attack in Venezuela? And what would that look like?
Yeah, so I'm not saying that they are openly going to say that's what they want, but I think they would not be upset about it because here's the other thing that we've never seen before. We've never had an ego in the White House like this. You remember when Barack Obama came down the red carpet and announced that, Osama bin Laden had been killed and how the world reacted. Trump has been trying to replicate that moment so many times. From the B-2 bomber strike in Iran to getting Soleimani. He's been trying to replicate it, and it has not stuck.
But when he says they died like dogs, it kind of undermines a little bit the seriousness of the,
Right. And so Venezuela, would we win a conflict with Venezuela? Sure we would, because we would concentrate our resources, etc. But it's not about winning the conflict. It's about, okay, what does the peace look like? We've had this happen to us in Afghanistan and Iraq. And here's the thing. The American public has made it very clear. They do not want to be engaged in any type of long-term conflict like that again. But if it makes President Trump look strong, which is why I think he's doing it, then he'd be for it. Let's play it out, though. Let's say the thing, it's not like Desert Storm where it's like a month's drawn out conflict. I think you would see the American public start to wake up because now you have been trying to kick service members out. Now you need every service member you can. There'll be rumors about a draft and all this other kind of stuff, and things will become very real very quickly. I think long term it will be devastating to engage with Venezuela, not because we can't win the military conflict, but because we have no security strategy, no national security strategy. No one can tell you what the peace is supposed to look like, right? So when you deal with those uncertainties and miscalculations, that's a problem. And and no offense to the current administration, but they are not.
No, go ahead, offend them. It's all good.
I mean, no, they really don't have a bench of deep thinkers ready to go. They don't.
I know. We offend them all the time.
That's the most diplomatic way I think I've ever heard anybody say that.
It is because they chose that bench. So I don't feel bad offending them because there are plenty conservative thinkers who they just weren't MAGA types who they could have chosen from among who actually were experts and were smart people. They chose purposely. This is what Trump's done his whole life. They chose the half-asses. They chose the people that were amateur, that most of whom, if you look at their records, I mean, did you commit assault and did your mom write a letter about how horrible you are? Did you shoot a puppy in the face? It's like a rogues gallery from like some kind of joke or something. I mean, they're ridiculous.
Related to that, that feeds right into one of the questions I wanted to ask Bobby, and that is Pete Hegseth. I mean, never mind all the, the drunken history and the alleged rape and all that kind of thing. What was going through your mind, Bobby, when the story emerged that he had been sharing, certainly, I don't know if it's classified, but certainly sensitive war plans about how and when they were going to bomb Houthi rebels? What went through your mind as a former military commander when you heard about that?
So let's talk about Hegseth. He has been my personal chew toy because Let me put it this way.
Choose some more for us, please.
He is not. Look, he's about as sharp as a bowling ball, right? This man, I watched him on not the A team for Fox News, but the B team. Make a complete jackass of himself, ruining 2 military nonprofits. And when Tammy Duckworth asked him to name the countries in ASEAN and what they're for, which, that's Southeast Asia and all this other kind of stuff. I know that. He couldn't name one. I was like, and I literally said out loud, there's no way they're going to confirm this guy. And I literally said,
I thought he would probably say Atlantis, if you were being honest. I thought he was going to come with that.
I literally said to myself, I'm more qualified to be SecDef than he is.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And I'm sitting there, but they confirmed him. So when I heard about Signalgate, the first thing I thought of was this man literally thinks he's playing war with plastic green soldiers in a sandbox. And he's tweeting his boys, we did this. Da, 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 da. If any of us, officers, enlisted, whatever, had did what he did, we are going to court-martial. Period. Full stop. Whatever. What happens? In the ultimate irony of DEI, another mediocre white man is not fired, but now he's the ambassador to the United Nations in Michael Waltz. Okay. Pete Hegseth, not fired, still Secretary of Defense. Mind you.
Aren't you court-martialed, if I can ask you? I don't mean to cut you off, but aren't you court-martialed still just for committing adultery?
Oh, yeah.
So, honestly, Pete Hegseth probably has about 8,000 reasons he could have been court-martialed. If we're being honest, it's everything.
He's the most unqualified leader of the Department of Defense that we have ever had. And if you notice, he repeats the same word like lethality, and warrior, because he still thinks like he's like an E5 sergeant in the Army when you're supposed to be up here. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to be thinking strategy, big thoughts. You're supposed to be thinking force management. You're supposed to be thinking all of these other things. And instead, you want to go out and do push-ups with the bros. As a matter of fact, in the military, a lot of these guys call him sec bro because he has a bro mentality.
Oh my God, he's the broest of the bros. It's unbelievable.
You're just like, whatever. And I saw the interviews of him right before he got nominated for SecDef, and he's talking about the way these people think and and we got to purge them from the service academies all the way through this, that, and the other. And it made me realize something. They have this image of what military might looks like. It is a square-jawed, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, crew-cut white guy. And what
blonde-haired, blue-eyed? Where does that come from in history? I'm trying to think.
I'm just telling you what the evidence is showing me.
And I'm agreeing with you and saying you're 100% right.
What's blowing my mind is if you took out every Black and Latino member of the military out of the armed forces, you don't have one. Mm-hmm. You don't have one. When you think about it historically, the first person to die for this thing called America was a Black sailor and Christmas addicts.
Okay? Yeah.
I can go through the list of how the military, and I've said this many times, is the original DEI institution of the United States. Not because they wanted to, because we had no goddamn choice, right?
I'd like to honestly put him in the Clockwork Orange sort of thing and make him watch Glory and see if he learns anything from that.
Nah, he would probably try to delete that movie. I guess the thing that's blowing my mind here, as he went and he's purging, flag officers, which is why this meeting has, all these generals and admirals worried, is because loyalty is not competency. As a matter of fact, the loyalty thing is the reason the Soviet Union, collapsed. It's the reason Germany got defeated and Italy got defeated, because they put loyalists there that weren't the most qualified. For you to fire Charles Brown as chairman of the Joint Chiefs as soon as he comes in, right? I'm like, this dude is a combat veteran pilot, did all of these things, has established air superiority around the world. And solely because he talked about how hard it was for him to be that guy, being the only Black dude in the squadron. I have a brother that's Air Force pilot. I know exactly what he's talking about. And because he exposes this, he's got a problem with it. Or Lisa Franchetti, who I know personally, who was the CNO of the Navy, who has knocked down more missiles than any other CNO in history. All those things, Yemen and stuff like that, and all those missiles getting knocked down. That's hard, people. As someone who stood the watch, it's hard. But hey, let's just put someone in that looks the part. And here's my final piece with Hegseth. He is in no way brought the military together. He has gone through and he's found different groups to ostracise. And when shit
particularly
hits
women,
the fan, women, minorities, identity issues that if you really look at the troops on the ground at the deck plate, we don't give a shit. Man, look, if you serve 20-some years like I did, you realize how much that job sucks over the course of time. You want dudes and dudettes that you can rely on. That's all you care about. The military is notorious for taking the gangbanger from LA and the white supremacist from Alabama, put them in the same goddamn unit, and they become best friends. That's what we do.
Yeah.
This man is single-handedly ripping that fabric apart because he has some 1940s or 1950s version of a John Wayne movie in his mind, saying that's what the American military should look like. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to be damn hard to recruit if this continues. And more importantly, they bounce the idea of using Charlie Kirk to recruit for the military. Name one black or brown neighborhood that you're going to be able to go into with his face on something and say, we want you to join up because this man motivates you. Are you kidding me?
Right.
The recruiting numbers are already starting to go down. If you notice, they have not released recruiting numbers recently. They've had meetings about it, but they haven't released those numbers. I wonder why. Someone who used to be recruiting.
Well, if you think about how they fired I can't think of her name, the head of BLS when the economic numbers weren't good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll find their stooge to release fake numbers about it. It'll be like, he usually does it in a way that is awesome too, where he's like, our recruitment is 112%, or he comes up with some number like that you're just like, dude, yeah.
And cooking the books. I mean, I just did a story, Cliff, the other day about how the Trump administration has decided to stop and to halt the USDA reports, the annual surveys on hunger. There's a survey that's done which helps guide policy in terms of how do we work with local and state officials and at the federal level to try to deal with hunger on a bipartisan basis. Well, because the number of Americans that are hungry is increasing, and it's probably going to increase even more now because of the cut of SNAP benefits, they've just decided just to get rid of the reports. That's the mentality, is if you don't like the numbers, you just stop reporting things.
There's a guy named Stalin who did that, when they gave bad reports about his farming plan, which was as idiotic as one would think. Magically, the people that gave those reports were just suddenly gone. You can't win that way. I think, Bobby said it all. When everything you do is about appearance, when everything you do is about attention, when everything you do is about PR, the Republican Party, I would argue that's been a growing problem for a number of years. But Donald Trump has taken it to its final zenith of where that's all they do. It's all about appearance. It's all about, they don't govern anymore in any real sense. So why would they care about any of these things?
Let me ask y'all a question. Well, I guess it's more for our friends on the right. Everything that this current administration is ripping apart was literally established by that greatest generation. The post-World War II generation, they put all of these things in place because they had lived through a Great Depression and fought the largest conflict in the history of mankind. And in 8 months, we were watching all of it get away. Like you said, the numbers on seeing who's hungry in America. That generation came up with it because a lot of them were starving as kids, right?
Yeah.
When you look at foreign policy, that generation established NATO to keep Russia at bay. And this man's like, it doesn't matter.
And then Bretton Woods, so we could trade and bring, partners in and strengthen other countries. We didn't say they're getting a better deal than us. The whole point was to create a common framework so that we would have strength in this alliance. And because we were a wealthier nation, we might get a little bit of a worse deal, but that created another democracy and strengthened them. That was in our national interest. But he can't understand that. Everything is zero sum. It's us against them. He just can't. He can't get what NATO's about. He can't.
Yeah. Post World War II, not only did we have the best economy in the world left, but we spent a significant portion on that to rebuild the enemies that we just fought.
Exactly.
Because when you witness your buddy get his head blown off at Normandy, or your friend having to be dragged through the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, you realize that money ain't everything. Stability and security are things. Then after they got done fighting that war and starting all this, that's when the civil rights movement came up, because you can't go fight fascism abroad and then sit there and turn around and have segregation at home. It's a lot of things that happened because of that generation. Were they perfect? No. But at the same time, they realize there are certain things you don't put a monetary value on, and you try to grow and develop. Now, Trump was born in 46, so he's right there at the beginning of the baby boomer generation. Now we've gone from that to I want this, I want that. It's like you said, a zero sum game, blah blah blah, because he honestly believes, and this is the most ironic thing ever, the guy who dodged the draft 5 times, that America is strong enough to stay isolated in a globalized world. That makes no sense logically, but this is what we're dealing with. And so your farmers are suffering. Your manual workforce is suffering because a lot of them are immigrants. Your brain drain has started because doctors, lawyers, this, that, and the other. If they prescribe a COVID vaccination, with that, you could be sent to jail. Or if you are a lawyer and you try to sue the Trump administration, you make the enemies list. Every intellectual thing that we have developed since World War II, to include colleges and universities, are being assaulted by this administration. And America's got to ask themselves one question. It's one thing to say that you're number one and pound your chest. It's another thing to watch it slowly die and you do nothing.
But are we number one? I mean, we're not even number one. Go ahead, David. I'll just say, we rank education, healthcare. We're like number 47 and everything. Huh?
And as far as doing something, and I think of the military as being sort of the proverbial canary in the coal mine as far as all the problems and issues that are going to spread out through society because of Trump. Suppose you're still in the military. Suppose you're one of these admirals or a general, and you're in. How do you because there's 2 ways you can fight somebody. You can fight somebody as their critic and you can sort of pound away at them, or you can sort of be, okay, you're part of their team and try to convince them from sort of the inside. Suppose you're on the inside. What do you do if you're a military commander or general and all this stuff matters to you, but you still want to try to have some influence over where this is going? What do you do?
Can I add a little something to that too, which I think is the same as David's question, but more pointed right now? If you're called, and you don't have to answer this, but if you're called to this meeting, they just called, and that were you, do you go there and do you show your true colors and say this is ridiculous or whatever, or do you try to play along so you're inside the administration and you can stop some things?
No, I'll answer that with 2 things. One, a personal story. So January 6th, right? I was in command of my maritime expeditionary unit, and we are the type we can be dropped anywhere in the world within 24 hours and secure things. I literally looked at the TV, and my worst thought was, what if he calls the active duty military in to not just quell the rebellion, but to stop the election results from going forward? So I called home to my mom and dad, and I said, listen, if I get orders to go to D.C. to delay or stall the electoral results being executed, I will deny that order and I will get court-martialed. I'm telling you that right here, right now. And y'all are the first ones I'm telling. The fact I even had to make that statement to my parents was ridiculous. Okay.
Ridiculous. But it also says something about you, and we're lucky that you're out there.
That's why you have command to make those hard decisions. My second thing is, after World War II, the Air Force was established separately, but there was this movement by the new Air Force officers to pull in every aerial asset into the Air Force. That includes naval aviation. So, Top Gun and all that eventually happened. And the admirals had what's famously called the Revolt of the Admirals. They said, if you do that and pull away Navy aviation that just helped win World War II, then we all quit. And all of them said this, not one. It was like all the top 4 stars revolted and stood on business. They were like, we're not doing this. And the reason they did that was because they understood that flying, aircraft in the Navy is different than the Air Force. And it is. Most people don't realize that. But they were so principled on this that they threatened to resign. And they all had their letters. So here's the thing. We have got to have admirals and generals who are ready to do something like that. The big knock on the flag officers nowadays is that they are considered, more politician than actual, leaders. I disagree. I think that they probably have never been called to the carpet like this. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. We're going to find out. It's going to leak out what the heck this meeting was about, because Hegseth is going to try to keep it completely under wraps. But there's a reason that he is calling them there. He wants to in person say something that is going to be transformative. And the question I will have is, who's going to stand up and say this is wrong if that is the actual case? I think, if I had to guess, I think it's more military action than anything else. The question is, will they go to Congress to authorize it? Will it be seen as something that is lawful? How will the rest of the world see it? I mean, just looking at what's happened with Israel from October 7th to now, you've seen how the world has changed their point of view. When you go to war and you commit forces and ammunition to anything, you better make damn sure that you have a logical argument, an argument that anybody in the world could see and say, okay, that makes sense. And you better get a vote on it, whether it's a resolution from Congress or an outright declaration. I don't see any of that really happening. I don't know if this is going to be unilateral. I just know I'm glad I am not in.
I bet. I mean, see, because my theory and my worry has been, he talked big about Chicago. I didn't think he ever really was going to do that. He tried in LA, as you said. He got a lot of pushback. DC was easy because of its unique status. And what my concern here is that there are a lot of blue cities in purple and red states. I'm sitting in one of them. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, right? We got Sherrod Brown running for the Senate. He overperformed Kamala Harris a few years ago by 8 points, only lost by 3. Now Trump is so unpopular, he very much could win. But we have a Republican governor and a wimpy one at that who won't stand up to Trump. So what if right before an election, we've spotted Venezuelans in Parma, Ohio, or something random like that, and suddenly in Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Toledo, Dayton, whatever, the National Guard comes in, shuts down voting to ensure Sherrod Brown can't win. Now imagine that scenario in Iowa. Imagine that scenario in Nebraska. Imagine that scenario in other places where Democrats can either win a Senate seat, a House seat. That is my concern with all of this.
I think that's very, very justified concern. My concern with the midterms is that they will use every implementation to suppress the vote, because every poll that they're looking at, even their own, it's not going to be a blue wave. This thing's going to be a tsunami. Right?
That's why Joni Ernst dropped out. She was looked at numbers, was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I mean,
Yep.
So
Miss everybody's going to die and all this, And
apparently she meant her political career was going to die very soon.
Yeah, but and as an Air Force veteran, the fact that she voted for Hegseth, I'm just like, wow, a rape survivor and military, and she voted for this guy. And understand something, people. When this starts to happen, all this right now, we're, in the military, we have these different phases. Well, we're in phase 0, preparing the battle space, right? When we get to next year, January 2026, hold on to your butts, because I believe there'll be so much chaos purposely inflicted that not only will people question the vote, people will be scared to vote. How do I know this? Because I know history, and as a black man in the South, I know what voter intimidation looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I think the National Guard is about in these cities. That's the thing.
It's all about intimidation. And so I don't understand what happened where it just used to be, hey, your ideas should be enough. Ronald Reagan said, hey, if your ideas are good, you should be able to debate them on any platform, whether it's the radio, whether it's news, blah, blah, and your ideas should win the day. Hell, William F. Buckley said that, the father of the modern conservative
That's
movement.
right. Conservatives, however much I disagree with them, used to at least believe you debated your ideas and you convinced people. You won by doing that. And now it's gotten degraded to this. So I gotta have to, Dave may have another question, but I have to ask him. Again, and you may not be able to answer this. Do you think if these orders are given in a number of states, do you think that there are a number of folks in, whether it's National Guard, whoever, that will refuse to honor them?
I think what will happen if that happens, you'll see onesies and twosies. I think there'll be people who will be so, mostly people who know history and understand the legality, they'll do it. A lot of the cats in our armed forces, they rely on senior non-commissioned officers and officers to interpret, hey, what is going on? But understand something. We're putting them in a predicament they have never seen or prepared for. They haven't. So if you get orders to say go to, Portland, right, which has always been on Trump's list, and you go and you're sitting there saying, do we police the streets? How do we do that? This and other. They're going to look to their unit commanders and say, what do we do? Unit commander's going to say probably go. And while that's all happening, trust me, some will sue like the ACLU and it'll go up to Supreme Court. But in the meantime, they're going to execute those orders because it has not been deemed unlawful. And
that's my concern.
Right. But they'll fast track it because it's going to be of national interest. But the reality is, until it has been proven that the order is unlawful, I think most people will follow it. I think there will be some that will be like, this is ridiculous, and I refuse to do it. But I think more will do it until they hear an official word. Now, how the Supreme Court will rule on these things, that is anybody's guess. Because with Trump, ignoring the rest of the federal court circuits, it undermines the Supreme.
Oh, we froze for a sec.
Yeah.
We'll get him back. They can't hold Bobby down.
No.
Hold on. This happened earlier where he froze for a second. Let's see if he
Well, while this is while we're seeing if this thing is going to catch up or not, I'll have to say, Cliff, that this has been both one of the most interesting, enlightening, but also terrifying conversations that I think we have had since we've been doing this. And
we lost him. Let's see if we can invite him back in.
I say this, I mean, Bobby speaks because he speaks with authority, and it's insightful, and it's a perspective that all too often those of us who have not been in the military or served in the military, we don't get to hear. And it is a perspective that is really, I wish more people would be able to hear. Let's see if he'll come.
Are you back, Bobby? He's sort of back, but I'll say speak whenever you're back, Bobby. Interrupt us. It's all good. Even if we may not be able to get him back, but I'll just say quickly, I couldn't agree with you more. It is a harrowing conversation because here's the thing. People, and again, we've seen this again and again, people sort of not believe that Trump will do things that he's made so obvious before that he doesn't follow normal boundaries, that he's not sane, that he is not accepting of society's rules in the way. There's nothing that makes me think that he will not. And again, I don't think he'll do it in Chicago or places where the governors will stand up to him. But we have a number of states with red, like red or purple states with Republican governors who will say, come, like what they're talking about with Tennessee, come right in. And if these guys don't stand up to those orders, if they don't refuse them, what do we, democracy? Right. I mean, every one of those places, it's going to cost us seats. We may not win this back. And then what do we do? Because I'm not threatening anything. I'm not whatever, but I'm not living in an autocracy.
Yeah.
I'm not living in a place where they shut down elections. Yeah. That's not what I signed up for.
Do you have Bobby's contact info? That was going to be my last question, actually, is where people can find him and where his contact is info and what shows he's on. I know he's on Substack.
Well, I'm going to invite him on in case he's watching. I'll let you know, Bobby. Oh, there he is.
Anchor.
We got you back.
Yeah, I think it kicked me out at the top of the hour.
I think it was Trump, man.
Well, Bobby, we got to finish anyway, but I mean, finish your last point that you were making, but then also you got to give us your, where can people find you? Where can they watch you? All that kind of stuff.
And also give us some hope that if some of these guys follow orders, maybe there's a way that like some folks like you or some folks we don't know about or anybody anywhere, maybe some Martians will come down or whatever it is that somehow we may be able to even if he sends them into cities, resist and be able to have people vote. Because as I just said, I'm not looking to fight. I don't believe in violence. I also believe in democracy, and I'm not accepting anything less than that. So I don't know where that puts me.
I think you guys are absolutely correct. It's going to take courage on the American citizens' part. What I mean by that is when they are going out of their way to dissuade you from voting here in the next year. I mean, if you look at local state houses, North Carolina, Georgia, these things have already started. You've got to find the courage to go and vote anyway. I'm not saying be brave. I'm saying being courageous. Brave is like you're never scared. Courage means, yeah, I'm scared, but I'm going to do my job. That's why in the Navy we say honor courage commitment, not honor bravery commitment, because average everyday citizens can do extraordinary things for our country. That's the first thing. The second thing I would encourage everybody to do, and I've been saying this as president for Veterans for Responsible Leadership, is go to a local meeting, whether it's your city council, county commissioner, or state government. Let them know that it matters. You don't even have to say a word. Just your presence being there, people are going to look around and be like, oh, we got people here. Yeah, because we care, damn it. We're paying attention. The thing that they're relying on is American ignorance.
Yeah.
push a lot of things forward. And here's the thing, you may not be left or this and other, but you should be all about due process, whether it's in your voting, whether it's about someone being arrested. That is what separates us from everybody else. Due process. Part of that process is letting your representatives know that you care and it matters. And then finally, I believe that we will break this fever. I think it's going to take people realizing that they made mistakes voting for certain people. But then the other piece of this is people, the ones that saw through it, you got to be able to welcome those people back. Because if you don't, we're going to be like this permanently. We need to have conversations and listen to why. And if it's based on bad facts, because most of them are, you got to be ready to show that, but don't do it in a condescending, I told you so manner. Because guess what? That ain't getting us nowhere. We are.
Now, I know the farmers and cattle ranchers and people that have lost workers and gone bankrupt, small businesses with tariffs. We do have to be willing to sort of say, come back into the fold, and I mean, the only other thing I can think to say, which, from my background in politics or whatever, is if you're scared on that day, I'm not saying they can't do anything to a crowd, but go vote in numbers. But if you have to vote, whether you vote early or whether you vote that day, go with a group, because there's always power in numbers. There's always unity in numbers. That's why unions exist. There's solidarity. If you go in a group, you're going to feel more courageous, I think.
I'll say this and I'll leave it alone. When I was on deployments, various deployments and stuff, and things got tight and I actually got scared, I did not think of some story of some badass warrior, sailor, SEAL or Marine or something like that. You know what I thought of? I thought of the little girls and boys in Birmingham in their Sunday best, marching in front of dogs and fire hoses because they want to be treated like citizens, 9, 10, 11 years old, going to jail, having fire hoses turned on them, dogs sicked on them because they were sick and tired of being sick and tired, like Fannie Lou Hamer said. That was my motivation. Not some bad. You don't have to be a badass to do badass shit. You just have to make up your mind. This is worth it. And ladies and gentlemen, this experiment that we have called America, and believe me, through all the faults, and as a black man growing up in the South, I've dealt with a lot of them. I still think that it's worth it. It's worth it to protect it and to continue to form what they said, the more perfect union. But it's up to us. It's up to us, people. It's that simple.
Bobby, where can people?
Brilliant closing statement for what we need to do.
Where can people find you?
I'm on Substack, and you guys have me on there. So at Navshad, NAVSHAD. But also too, I have a weekly live stream on Lincoln Project, which Lincoln Square really, at Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We bring on various guests and stuff like that, and love for you guys to tune in and take a listen.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely be tuning in. I mean, seriously, I've learned a lot here. This is important. This is the very essence of our democracy.
And you guys have been doing great work, man. I mean, I see y'all's YouTube videos all the time, and it's like,
well,
y'all are very upbeat.
We are, but we have to laugh so we don't cry.
Yeah, we laugh because the alternative is to cry. But you know what, Bobby, having conversations with you, the inspiration that you instill in so many of us and the hope that you give us, even through the realism, even through the hard times that I know we're facing, hearing your voice renews my sort of faith in what's possible. And so thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Yeah, let me say that too. I mean, I can't tell you, again, when you talk about what you went through, what you had to go through in the South growing up, as a black man, and and the level you reached. I can't imagine the shit that you had to go through to get there. That should be an inspiration that any of us can do anything. And so,
not ideal, but what though?
No, I bet not. It is, because I can't tell you. I know from folks who know you, and I know from just listening to you that we're lucky to have had you in the armed forces, and I hope other folks who are still there are listening to you and listening to what you're saying, because that's how we get out of all of this.
And we're lucky to have we're lucky to have your voice now, and keep speaking.
Please do. We need you.
I will do my best, gentlemen. I will do my
best.
You.
Thank you.
Great
show.
So much for joining us. I really
appreciate
everybody.
It,
Bobby.
No problem. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Cliff, great show as always. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Bye, guys.